Hello, Julie. Thank you for speaking with me today. So you have a podcast called The Voice of Aged Care, which is attached to your business Wise Care. And you started it about 2 years ago now. Is that right?
Yes. 2 years ago. That's gone quick.
So tell us why you decided to start the podcast.
Wow, what a journey it's been. I did some mentoring and development within my business. And one of the recommendations was, well, you're getting all these wonderful stories from aged care. Why don't you do something about it? And I wrote a book about my experience, but I also felt like the voice needed to be heard, not just mine, but also those who work in aged care and support our elderly. So I embarked on a journey of learning about podcasts, and I enrolled in a program through one of your colleagues, Carly Nimbo, and that was really beneficial. And once I finished that course, I just thought, oh my God, how the hell am I going to figure it all out and work it out, from the front end, from, the content, the
tech,
the name of the program, the topic each week, and then how will I be, cutting and condensing it. And it just seemed like a massive task. And I thought that was just something that, even though it was presented as being very easy, you just press a button here and there, it just felt really overwhelming. So at the end of that program, I put a post out in a group with the other podcasters, because I didn't see myself as a podcaster at that stage. And I said, is there someone that can possibly help me? And, lo and behold, Ellen was repeatedly recommended as the person to go to. So you are my podcast queen, and you have made my journey the success that it has been.
Oh, well, it's absolutely been your hard work, and I've just helped tie all the pieces together around in the background, I think. And because I know that especially when your primary job, your primary role is in your business, to be working with your clients and as you said, you've got your book and you've got some workshops happening, as well as the day-to-day work that you do with aged care facilities and clients in aged care facilities. It's not your core business, right, to be learning how to edit a podcast.
No, and on top of all that I'm doing within my business, I'm a mum. I've got a young family, and I'm juggling a lot as it is. And so just learning about podcasts, it just felt like it was a great idea, but not something that I could see would eventuate into a reality anytime soon. And now that as you said, it's been 2 years since I started my podcast journey. It's just amazing to think about the transformation that it has resulted in within my business and where I am today.
Yeah, so tell us about that. Tell us about the impact that having the podcast has had on your business.
So it's been huge, and it's been I've had nearly 10,000 listeners to my episodes. One episode in particular, over 2,000 listens. It's been very insightful for me to learn as to what topics and what information is relevant for people. So I have used it as a bit of an insider knowledge to know what is perhaps an area where I could develop some workshops and some training opportunities. It has led to a lot of business introductions. I have won few business opportunities, for $4,000, $6,000 as a result of someone who listened to my podcast, and I had no idea. And they,
and then they reach out.
I think I have reached probably about 30 messages from people who contacted me saying, hey, I listened to your podcast. Where can I buy your book? Where can I do your training program? Can you do this program at our facility? So that's been unexpected. And, juggling as much as I am at the moment in my business, marketing is not something that I have time to actively be seeking. So it's beautiful how podcast has actually allowed me to do that, and how they've come back, like with these business opportunities that I didn't necessarily expect when I was putting it out. So it's led to that. There's not many podcasts in aged care. So I read somewhere that you need to have 7 touch points with people before they make a business decision with you, and podcast has certainly allowed me to do that very easily.
Yeah, absolutely. And we should say too, you're not podcasting every single week of the year. You've done 2 seasons. So one season each year that you've been podcasting. So you actually haven't had to be spending, heaps amount of time every week creating a new podcast episode every single week. It's just ticking away in the background when you're actually working in your business, and then people find it and they listen to it and then they reach out to you.
Oh, absolutely, Ellen. This morning I just checked my stats before our interview, and I could see someone was listening to an episode that was 2 years ago. And you just think like that content is still relevant.
Absolutely.
And I certainly have not, I don't have time to do recordings every week, and I don't have time to be constantly, on top of my podcast, and I don't have the funds to be doing it every week. But I find that it's something that doesn't age. Yeah. And I've done two seasons, and I'm about to do another one for the remainder of this year. And it takes time to map out what will the content will be.
Yeah.
So my recommendation would be not to, I don't actually know anyone who does podcasts like constantly. Everyone has a break in between, and I think that it's something that it's invaluable, because in your business you can spend money on advertising or marketing or putting something in a piece here and there, but podcast is something that just does not go out of time or date. It's just something. Yeah.
It's got longevity, and it really creates that connection with people because it's the voice in their ears when they're doing something.
A lot of people listen
mundane.
a lot of people say they're listening when they're commuting, when they're driving, and they look forward to listening to my episodes then. So I know myself, like when I'm out and on the road and driving, I listen to podcasts and just the value that it adds. And so that's certainly something that I don't think about, that aspect, that people really like to listen to it when they're switching off on their commute to work. So it's given me a few more ideas for future episodes as to like the tone that I use, or, perhaps, making it even more conversational because of the work that I do in my business and the fact that we need to have more conversations about aging.
Yeah, absolutely we do. Absolutely we do. And I've learned so much from your podcast, because obviously it's not an area that I knew much about before listening to your podcast, but I've learned so much, and it's been really inspiring as well to think of all and to hear about all the different guests that you've had, all the great people working in the sector as well, to make it a better experience for everybody.
Thank you.
So what about challenges and problems that you've experienced over with the podcast, other than that overwhelm at the beginning and deciding that outsourcing was the way to help with that? Any challenges along the way?
Probably one of my challenges has been just the timing and working out what is my topic that I'm going to present, and will I have a guest speaker, and then I book in an interview with someone, and that morning they're like, oh, I just woke up with laryngitis, I can't do an interview with you today. So just having that flexibility, and I guess just thinking like, oh, what will be the next episode about, and mapping it out. So I found it really helpful mapping it out ahead. And what I've also done is a couple of times is just record a couple of episodes at the go, because sometimes you get these creative juices and you just go, oh my God, I need to get this out there and I need to get it out. So it's just like rolling with it. And sometimes you might have periods when you're like, I have nothing to say. And then other times you might be, more inspired. So I think that, the challenges or the problems has been about sourcing appropriate guests. And also, for the next season that I'm going to do, actually, I'm not going to have guests. I'm going to talk. And it's actually, hey, that is actually okay, because it's not necessarily about guests. People want to hear what I'm saying as well.
And your expertise to be on show.
So not putting too much pressure on myself about that. So I think the challenges I've been overcoming them, through the seasons by getting a bit more clarity as to what it is that I want to address in that series, and mapping it out ahead. I found it really, really good. And sticking to a time frame, trying to go like, okay, I'm going to do 6 episodes, I'm going to do 10 episodes, or just mapping it out, as opposed to thinking, okay, for the next 3 months I'll do an episode every week. I would not be able to do that.
And I think being realistic about that too, so that you're not actually doing 3 in a row and then having a big gap with nothing. You've actually mapped it out, and then it comes out in an organized fashion, which helps for the people listening. That gives them a little bit of continuity as well of what to expect.
Yeah, so just, mixing it up, like having guests sometimes, other times not having guests. There's some podcasts that I listen to every week. They have a guest. But then one of my favorite podcasts, Jim Fortin, he's only ever had one guest, and he's got so many, people who listen to his podcast. So yeah, just, there's no rule as to what you need to do with your podcast, and you really have to make it work for you.
Yeah.
And to be comfortable with it.
100%. Well, what would be your recommendation to somebody who is maybe in the place that you were a couple of years ago, thinking about podcasting, kind of having something to say, a message that they want to get out in the world? Because, I know that you've got this really great mission about halving depression rates in aged care facilities. And what would be your recommendation for someone who's a professional in an industry where they've got a real message and a mission, and they're thinking about podcasting as a way to enhance that message and that mission?
Yeah, sure. So my number one recommendation would be to outsource it. First and foremost, outsource the production side of it. It's so time consuming, and when you're not experienced with it, it really can drain you, and it can make you feel a little bit disheartened about your skills and your abilities to do things. So outsource it to someone like yourself, where you can just, hey, Ellen, here's the file, and you magically put it together, and people go, wow, that was a great episode. And I'm thinking, yeah, there was a little fairy that helped me along the way. and really focus on what, like, as I said, like, what is the objective of your podcast episode, what you want to achieve in it, the message that you want to set, the tone that you want to do, minimizing disruptions and background noises, so that you focus on the things that you can control. And then once the file is done, sending it across to someone like yourself, because it's worth every penny doing it that way. And it can actually make the longevity of your podcast much longer than you anticipate, because it's realistic, and you can have more episodes out there than you might, think initially if you do it all yourself from start to finish. Because as I say, like, if you're doing everything yourself, it gets overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I think even, like, for you, like, it's a lot easier when you just go, okay, I'm doing the production, as opposed to the whole lot. I think it makes your job easier too. So it's allowed me, the flexibility of having someone like yourself help me with that has allowed me to grow my business and bring in more revenue and focus on the skills that I have in my business, as opposed to, like, exploring to do it all myself. I'm very keen to be podcasting, but I'm not keen to learn all the techie, bits and how to make that better, because that's your expertise.
And it doesn't have to be you. I mean, your expertise is in your business and in your serving your clients. And we've been so thrilled to work with you, and so thrilled to hear about the success that it's brought your business as well. And even aside from the revenue, but the people that reach out and tell you,
absolutely,
it's motivated them to make changes in the way they work with aged care clients as well. Because, I mean, that's hopefully helping spread that mission of yours.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Widespread.
No, thank you for everything you've done. And, the fact that, we've had the pandemic. I had a baby last year. Being able to recycle and promote those episodes has been so beneficial, because people haven't really noticed the fact that, like, it's not a new episode, we're just revisiting another one. It doesn't really matter.
It has longevity.
Yeah, absolutely. So I like that about it, and I really have appreciated your input in terms of my, intro, outro, and how to word it, so that, if someone listens to it today, they might not realize, hey, that was recorded 16 months ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And because it becomes an asset then for your business that, you invested 16 months ago, but that asset is still paying off and paying dividends.
Absolutely. And it's the same message that I would have said today about that topic. So I find that it's not something that necessarily evolves. What's evolving is the new topics that come up as a result of my experience, but it's not something that gets outdated. And I'm not talking in there about techniques that I'm used to use. It's still very relevant, and it's still a nice way to think back about some of my clients who've passed away, and, just the experience that I've had on a certain topic and lessons that I've learned that I can still revisit. The other thing that I forgot to tell you is that when I run my training sessions, I actually encourage people to listen to podcasts if they want to learn more about certain topic. So it's actually helped me in the delivery of my programs as well. It's like, if we talk about how, improving activities of daily living for older people. I'd be like, listen to the podcast. You need to see about art therapy, or you need to learn about diversional therapy or something. So it's actually been an additional resource to what I'm doing. Yeah, and that, like, I did not expect that. Like, I just thought, okay, well, podcast is here, business is here, workshops are here, but it's been a beautiful way to link
connect them all.
Yeah.
Well, that's so wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us today, Julie, because I'm so excited that the podcast is continuing for a third season this year, and really, really thrilled that we get to continue to work with you. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you for making my dreams come true.
You're welcome.